You're listening to Freezecast, a podcast discussing all the latest news and drama in the Toontown community. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Freezecast. This is episode 4, brought to you by our first returning sponsor, FreezeVPN. We have a special guest with us today. Please welcome legendary Toontown content creator, Coach Zucchini.
Hey there, Toons! Thank you for having me on the show today, Freeze. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
So have I. Today, the topic is Toontown content and why it no longer works on YouTube. You should know a lot about this since you're such an old content creator, in more ways than one.
Yes, it'll be coming up on 16 years since I uploaded my first video in August. That was quite a while ago. And the reason I started making those videos was just because people were so bad at the game. Now tell me, why on earth would you use an emoji after someone pulls out lore?
That's a good question. Sometimes I wonder if people are macroing their gag choices.
Now that you mention it, that would explain why so many Toons don't know that you shouldn't use sound on lured cogs. There's a reason that speech at phrase exists, and it's because using sound on lured cogs is a horrible idea.
I would have to agree with you on that. Never forget the stupid rabbit.
That rabbit is a terrible player and person. You do not just spam sound when someone tries to lure. What was that rabbit thinking?
You said that the topic is Toontown content.
Yes. And why it no longer works on YouTube.
Well, I would say there are many reasons that Toontown content doesn't work anymore, not the least of which being it's an older game. People just don't want to watch videos of it anymore.
I would have to disagree with you there. There are still plenty of old games that do well on YouTube. Take RuneScape, for example. It's older than Toontown, and it still gets way more views than Toontown does. Or World of Warcraft, which is almost as old as Toontown, and it still gets a good amount of views. Even Super Mario 64, which predates Toontown by about 17 years, gets many more views.
What do you think is the biggest reason?
We'll get into that after we talk about today's sponsor, FreezeVPN. FreezeVPN is the world's first dedicated VP and service for Toontown servers, so you can play with confidence, knowing that Joey won't be spying on sensitive personal data, such as your IP address and location. Even if you visit sketchy websites like Tooniversal Studios, Operation Desert Storm, or Toontown Archive, which are all glorified Bitcoin mining operations, you'll be safe. Visit the link below to get 30% off a FreezeVPN subscription, plus 3 extra months for free. Thank you, FreezeVPN, for sponsoring this portion of today's podcast. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's continue. In my personal opinion, the reason Toontown content is all but extinct is because the player base simply grew up, or most of them did anyway, and they realized that idolizing a dead Disney MMO from the early 2000s is a stupid and immature idea.
That's a fair point, although there are obviously still many Toontown players who still worship their server of choice. Corporate Clash and Toontown Archive are 2 examples of that.
Yes, there are. Unfortunately, still a lot of no-life losers and idiots who sit in their gamer chairs all day playing Toontown. But they aren't really watching Toontown content on YouTube. Even Toontown live streams on Twitch barely get any viewers.
I definitely agree. Although I haven't been around the Toontown scene on Twitch, I can imagine it's a barren wasteland.
That it is. Not even Mega Snoop plays Toontown very often anymore, which is a good thing because now he can go to the gym.
I think you and I both know he won't.
That much is obvious. Anyway, getting back on topic, you mentioned there were other reasons Toontown content is dead. What would those be?
Yes, the other big contributing factor in the death of Toontown content, I feel, is that Toontown servers get no new players. They were all a waste of time to make, and their updates are so infrequent that you hardly notice whenever they do finally update.
Of course, we all know the horrible update schedules of both Corporate Clash and Toontown rewritten. The fact that they're the 2 top servers says a lot about the community. It feels like it's been a decade since either of them had any sort of meaningful content update that wasn't complete garbage. Although in the case of Corporate Clash, they have never had a good update and never will.
I mean, how do they expect to grow their respective games if they don't provide content? Corporate Clash is taking a very idiotic route right now with their 2.0 update.
They really are. No new content means no new players, and no old players will return either. And no players leads to no content. No content leads to less people hearing about the game, which leads to less players, and the cycle repeats.
Exactly. In the case of TTR, they have no updates at all happening anytime soon. They may have announced some big updates at last year's Toonfest, but everyone knows Clear Coast won't be out before the end of the decade.
And the same spiraling death cycle will come for Rewritten too.
It's a sad truth that all Toontown players will have to accept soon enough. Nothing lasts forever.
In my opinion, the death of Toontown is something to be celebrated, because the community is rife with injustice. Another big reason that Toontown content is dying is because more and more people every day are realizing that this game is not fun or engaging at all. I mean, what a stupid idea to think a game whose main content is a series of fetch quests would keep people's attention.
Yo, by today's standards, I can see that, but the game was very innovative for its time.
Its time was over 20 years ago.
Touché. Going back to what you said about the community being unjust. I do think the moderators are way too trigger-happy when it comes to banning players. They also seem to constantly take chat logs out of context, among other things, to make the bans seem more justified, which they are not.
Seeing the moderation practices of the two most quote-unquote popular servers, I would not be surprised if the majority of bans they issue are unjust or exaggerated. My ban was certainly unjust. And to give you an example of an exaggerated ban recently, one of the members of the Justice for Freeze organization got globally terminated for spamming Justice for Freeze at a Beanfest, which was apparently harassment. But yes, nobody wants to make content for games that have moderation teams full of 5-year-olds.
I know I certainly don't. To tell you the truth, I'm too scared of getting banned to even play Toontown Rewritten anymore. It feels like at any moment, I could get banned from the game just for playing it.
I'm sure that sentiment is shared by many TTR players.
Oh, definitely. You could get banned for sneezing on that game. It's ridiculous.
Or even just looking at another player, which half the time, you can't even control. I think we may have overlooked a major flaw with Toontown content. There's like nothing to do that people haven't seen a million times before.
That's a great point. I mean, who would want to watch a VP battle for the 785th time?
I won't name any names, but I can think of a few people off the top of my head.
They sound like very well-rounded individuals.
If by well-rounded you mean fat, then yes.
The community for this game is really, well, something else.
It sure is. We're running over time a bit here, but I want to talk briefly about the YouTube algorithm before we get into some listener-submitted questions.
The YouTube algorithm. What about it?
Do you think that Toontown content is being suppressed by the algorithm?
It's definitely possible, considering how dead the genre is. Yes, I think that probably is part of the problem. The algorithm pushes content that gets engagement and watch time. Correct.
Yes, that is correct. Which means that Toontown content is being buried even further. You have to go looking for it to even find out that it exists.
So if the folks at home learn anything from this discussion, let it be this. Do not
go into Toontown content creation. The cards are stacked against you. The game is dying, and the moderators are actively trying to kill the game even faster. And you will not get anything out of creating Toontown content, except an empty feeling and the haunting notion that you wasted all your time.
Now how about those listener-submitted questions?
Our first listener-submitted question is, how old were you when you started your YouTube channel?
I was quite young back then, only in my mid-50s. Oh, to be young and so full of life and energy again.
You were playing Toontown in your mid-50s. I'm not even trying to be mean, but that's a little sad. Didn't you have anything better to do, like play golf?
Yes, I played golf on Toontown. Next question.
All right, here's the next question. Why were you yelling at children over a video game as a middle-aged man?
Ah, not this question again. I swear I have already answered this so many times before. It's because I am a coach, not your mommy. My job as a coach is to get the best play possible out of Toons.
I understand, but why were you yelling at kids over a video game?
Why do coaches yell at their team's players in sports the way I see it? It's no different. Next question.
Okay. The next question submitted by listeners is, I've seen your Twitter account. Why are all your tweets so unhinged?
Well, I've been playing Toontown for over 20 years. Try doing that and see if you don't act a little unhinged from time to time.
On December 3rd, 2021, you tweeted, quote, "The problem with saying 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. is you can't tell if it means noon or midnight. Please. Please, 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 please say noon or midnight, not 12 a.m. or 12 p.m." End quote. And then followed up with, quote, "Look. Toons. This isn't hard to understand. AM means ante-meridian, or before the meridian. PM means post-meridian or after the meridian at noon. It is on the meridian, not before or after. There is no +0 or -0. It is noon." End quote. What prompted you to write this stream of garbage?
It's so hard to tell the difference between AM and PM. It's way easier to just say noon or midnight.
I disagree. It's actually quite easy. Perhaps it's another side effect of playing Toontown for 2 decades.
That's probably a fair assessment. Next question.
The final question the listeners have for you is this. Do you still believe that you didn't green the red monkey? Because you obviously did.
I'm sick and tired of people bringing this up. I did not green the red monkey. The red monkey greened himself.
Maybe he was following your advice and trying to follow the high tune.
I find that very hard to believe when he was literally sneaking his way through the factory. I couldn't let him get to the VP only to pass every round.
You still greened him. He went sad because of actions you took with malicious intent. That's literally the definition of greening.
He could have chosen a gag. It was his fault.
And you did nothing to save him. On September 9th, 2018, you tweeted, quote, "New stream chat rule. Anyone in the chat asking, why did you green the red monkey? Or words to that effect, will be immediately banned from the chat. The question has a false presumption that I do not accept. Stop asking it," end quote. It sounds to me like you were trying to censor the truth. That's something we here at Justice for Freeze don't take kindly to.
You know what? Fine. I didn't green the red monkey because I was the red monkey. There. Are you happy? It was all me multi-toning so I could get a free video.
Wow. I need a second to process this.
Take all the time you need.
I'm still just, wow. You heard it here first, folks. Coach Zucchini was the red monkey.
Yes, I suppose the truth had to come out sooner or later.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Coach Zucchini, thank you for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise, thank you again for having me. I really should be going. We'll talk more about this later. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Well, folks, that was Coach Zucchini. I don't really know what to say other than that was a very interesting conversation. Tune in next time when we'll have a more recent Toontown content creator on to discuss the importance of personal hygiene. And don't forget to claim your 3-month free trial of FreezeVPN, plus 30% off by using the link below. This has been Freezecast Episode 4. Freeze, signing off.
Funding for this episode of Freezecast was made possible in part by FreezeVPN and by listeners like you. Thank you. Freezecast is written and produced by Mr. Freeze for Justice for Freeze. This podcast is a parody meant for entertainment purposes only. The creators of Freezecast do not condone the harassment of anyone appearing in or mentioned in this podcast. Freezecast is a work of fiction. All characters appearing in this work are fictitious. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Thank you for listening to Freezecast.